OK, ladies and gents, lots to get through this hour, but we start with our top story today. And, of course, Suella Braverman has unveiled plans to detain almost all asylum seekers who arrive on small boats before deporting them to a safe third country. Now, the Home Secretary told MPs that it would betray British voters not to tackle the waves of illegal migrants breaching our borders. Speaking in the House of Commons, she outlined the scale of the problem, reiterating that they will not stop coming until the world knows they will be detained and sent back indefinitely.
Let's be clear, they are coming here. We've seen a 500% increase in small boats crossings in 2 years. And this, Mr. Speaker, is the crucial point of this bill. They will not stop coming here until the world knows that if you enter Britain illegally, you will be detained and swiftly removed. Removed back to your country if it's safe, or to a safe country, a safe third country like Rwanda. And that is precisely what this bill will do. That is how we will stop the boats.
Well, it's worthwhile noting that she also said that she believed that around 100 million people could be eligible to come to the UK under the current rules and regs that we have, which is a shockingly large number. And also worth noting that in about 20 minutes' time, we're going to be going live to a news conference with the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, who we imagine is going to elaborate a little bit more on what Suella Braverman said there in that clip. But this new bill also gives the government the power to set an annual cap on the number of refugees accepted into the country, with local authorities currently being consulted on how many numbers they can take. So, should we cap the number of refugees we allow into the UK, or will it do more to harm than good? Joining me now is the Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. It's Stephen Woolfe. I am also joined by independent statistician and political commentator Jamie Jenkins. Thank you very much, both of you. Stephen, do you just talk to me about this? And do you think we should have a cap on the amount of refugees we take every year?
I think it's really a reasonable thing to do is suggest that we do have a cap. We should have a cap on lots of things, really, because, as you saw very clearly in that clip from Suella Braverman, the recognition that the numbers of people coming in claiming asylum, both illegal and genuine, are huge. And we're spending £7 million a day on housing, £10 billion for a 4-year contract, and over the course of the year, £8 billion is our estimates of what it costs the UK Exchequer to cover immigration and asylum in this country. So holding a cap is a good idea. And let me just say about today, Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak have managed to achieve something that many Home Secretaries and Prime Ministers haven't done, which is use legislation to sideswipe those in the immigration legal industry. It's a positive day for them. There's plenty in this to be challenged, but I think lots of it will find it very difficult for those challenging them. And also, it's an incredibly bad day for the people smugglers who will see their model being smashed today.
OK, well, that's a positive take on the situation. I'm going to get you to elaborate on that in just a matter of moments, but I'll bring Jamie in now. Jamie Jenkins, independent statistician and political commentator. Do you think we should put a cap on the number of refugees that we welcome into Britain?
Yeah, good afternoon, Patrick. So I think what Stephen's saying there is pretty much spot on in terms of the refugee part of things, because remember, why do we need immigration coming into the country at all? Well, if you look at the population projections for the next, say, 20 years, partly because we're having fewer births, so the total fertility rate is under 2, so we're not having enough births to replace people who will die. We'll actually lose 1 million people in the population by 2040. So you need kind of more wider immigration, which is what you would class as the kind of the more legal immigration, to ensure you've got enough people of the working age population at the moment because of the fertility kind of decline over the last 10 or 20 years. So you need some numbers there. But the challenge with the kind of the refugees, Patrick, is that they can't come in when they work. They cost an absolute fortune because they can't contribute to the economy. And I think Stephen's quoted like £7 million a day. The numbers I'm looking at is probably closer to £10 million a day overall. And you can't continue with this kind of huge bill of, say, £3.5 billion a year. So I think a cap on refugees is important, but you've got to look at the more wider immigration and kind of birth kind of policy for the country over the next 10 or 20 years, because that's just as critical as sorting this out.
OK, all right. Now, Stephen, I understand that, bear in mind, we're about to hear from Rishi Sunak supposedly in about 20 minutes' time at a news conference there. And a lot of the question marks about this were, well, hang on a minute, is any of this actually going to be legal. And Stephen, you might have a little bit of insight for us.
Yeah, I talk to people in the Home Office. They've been giving briefings out to the press and other people over the course of the day. And what is very clear to me is three significant elements. The first of those is the legal right on the Home Secretary to actually have these provisions in place to remove illegal migrants. That's crucial because that's the first time that's ever been done. And it forces the Home Office and the government to be able to ensure they have policies and procedures to remove them. Secondly, they recognise that there will be legal challenges, but they put a really high bar. They're saying that you can still claim asylum, but it doesn't have to be in this country. You can take them to Rwanda. And what is very clear to us, and what they made very clear to us, is that, yes, at the moment, whilst this is going through Parliament, you will hear from them in the future other deals in the pipeline, but they can't tell us which countries and where. And thirdly, what's really crucial about this is the way that they've really superbly been able to use the law to prevent the modern slavery laws, the European Courts of Human Rights, and still enable us to be within them, yet prevent people from being able to use them in the first-tier tribunal, which is crucial. So they've done this brilliantly, and I would say that looking through this is very positive. There will be still some issues. I'm certain that those involved in the other side of the argument will challenge, but I think there's a lot of positives here, and I'm from one who's been monitoring this for many, many years.
Just to clarify a bit on that, Stephen, before I go back to Jamie. So is there something along the lines, if I've heard that correctly, that they will still be able to say to the courts, we are offering these people asylum, just not here?
That's correct. So you don't have to offer them the asylum process in the UK. They're saying you can take them, as you saw with Suella Braverman, in Rwanda. But I believe that there will be other countries that they can take them to. Secondly, there's a high bar of got to be like severe reasons of why you'll want to stay here. For example, health. But as we know, 80% roughly of all of them are coming over are young men, so they're fit and healthy. So they will no longer be able to comply with Section 8 of the Human Rights Act or ECHR. So again, they're clamping down on that, and they'll be clamping down on family requirements too. So they're going to minimise the number of people who could generally claim asylum here within the 28 days.
Well, that is fascinating. Jamie, just going to go back to you now. Do you think that more British people should be looking at the wider picture, such as population growth and birth rates, from what you were saying, and essentially we should be there saying refugees welcome because we need more births? Is that right?
Well, no, I'd probably say what you've got is because the kind of the fertility rate has come, and remember that migration policy of the last 20 years will have an impact there, Patrick, because we've had such an influx of migration over the last 20 years. That puts a huge demand on services. We've seen house prices go up. So the reason some families are having fewer children now, which you do need the children to come kind of through the system to pay for the pensioners because we're an ageing population as well. So past migration has an impact on the number of children people have. So it kind of perpetuates the problem, but we do need to kind of open our eyes in terms of our overall demographic policy in this country, because the government's figures themselves say that to maintain the percentage of the working population, we're going to need 200,000 migrants over the next kind of 20 years per year, and that's quite a large number. That's going to put
just ask Jamie
on to social services.
I'm just going to ask you to delve into that a bit more for me, because I suspect that one of the reasons why people aren't having as many children as perhaps we could or should is because the living conditions aren't necessarily great, getting on the housing ladder a lot later. Maybe they just feel that there aren't the public services equipped to deal with the people who are already here in terms of school places, etc. And maybe mass immigration has had a part to play in that. So how would introducing even more people to that situation make it any better?
Well, that's the kind of the short-term solution. A long-term solution, obviously, Patrick, is to try and get kind of the birth rate back up. But you hit the nail on the head there, that because of the past 10, 20 years of migration having such a big impact on the kind of wider demographics, the reason people are having children a lot later, actually, now, Patrick, is because of house prices. People aren't cohabiting with a partner until much later, which obviously reduces the number of children you may have as well. So the government really needs to get a grip on this. This is a really important issue, stopping the small boats. My big concern, I think, with this policy, Patrick, is, we're talking potentially well over 60, 70, 80,000 potentially this year if they don't get a grip on it. We've got a huge backlog of 160,000 in the system, and there's no way a third country is going to take all of these. So that's going to be, the proof's going to be in the pudding in terms of what they can actually do when they get some new laws in place, I think.
OK, great stuff. Stephen, I'll just give the final word on this to you, just specifically because I know that you've had a bit of insight earlier on as to some of the government's plans here. So just run us through why you are happy about this, because people have been a bit doom and gloom about it. They're saying it's a lot of hot air, but you are quite content with what you've heard.
Yes, I've been critical of the government over the past 3 or 4 years on this policy, but what it does do today is by saying to those people who get into a boat that from the 7th of March, when you arrive on our shores, you'll no longer be able to claim asylum here, and if you're removed, you can be removed to a different country for assessment. And if you fail, you will never be able to have the right to come back. Now, look at that as an issue for a people smuggler who, over the past 3 or 4 years, has said, as soon as you get to the UK, you'll be able to get into a house, you'll go to a hotel, you'll get healthcare, education. That model has gone. And the only way that it will be preserved is if those who support as many of those asylum seekers and channel boat people coming over win in the courts. And why it's important, the second case, is that the legal teams of the Home Office have worked really hard to narrow down the opportunities to make claims in the courts. They've reduced the number of opportunities for using different issues such as people smuggling and trafficking, and also the ECHR and HR, Human Rights Act, and that's positive. And both of those together with future policies that we'll see coming through, which is greater removals and detention, numbers of planes that are going to come out, places that they're going to be detained at, and I believe greater numbers of countries that will take more and more people. I think that's going to be very positive. And Rishi Sunak will win in the polls, certainly in the north, if he manages to achieve this before the summer.
Well, we're going to be hearing live from Rishi Sunak, I understand it, in about 10 minutes' time. Both of you, thank you very, very much. That was, of course, the Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Woolfe, and the independent statistician and political commentator, Jamie Jenkins, there,